All right, let's turn to 1 Samuel chapter 20. First Samuel chapter 20. So last week in chapter 19, we were able to see that Saul again tried to kill David. First himself by throwing the javelin at him again. And then secondly, he tried to have him killed by others when they went and spied out his house, and his wife, David's wife Michal there, led him down so that he could escape. Saul has done everything that he can to try and hunt him down and kill him. But God has protected David. Tonight, we're going to find David going on the run. And his friendship with Jonathan is going to be pushed to the most difficult test. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, that David and Jonathan loved each other and they had a bond of friendship. That is really put to the test here in this passage, as David is fearful for his life and really needs to find out what's in Saul's mind. And Jonathan is going to step up and be a good friend to him. Let's talk about that tonight in chapter 20, a faithful friend. Let's talk about that here in chapter 20. Number one, let's talk about Jonathan and David. Okay? Jonathan and David. And let's talk about, number one, their conversation. Okay? There's a conversation here between Jonathan and David. Chapter 20, verse 1, it says that David fled from Naioth in Ramah. Now that was where he had went on the run previously, and Saul had tried to hunt him down. You remember how Saul had sent group after David, and when they got there and saw Samuel and the prophets worshiping and prophesying, they did the same. Even Saul himself, in hunting David, came and stumbled upon the scene, and he did the same thing. God showing that he was in control in that situation entirely. Now David flees from there and it says, and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What is mine iniquity, and what is my sin before thy father, that he seeketh my life?" David comes back, and he wants to find out, does Saul still want to kill him? This coming back and asking this question gives David an opportunity, first of all, to find out where Saul's at. Secondly, he's going to try to find out where Jonathan is at. Has Jonathan wasn't mentioned in that last passage of Scripture. What's happened to him? Is he in agreement with his father? What's in his mind? What's in his heart? So David comes back to his friend and asks him, "What did I do? Why does your father want to kill me? What have I done?" What has David done? Except slay the enemies of Israel. Play and use his talents and his abilities before Saul to calm him when that spirit of anxiety and depression comes upon him. David has been an admirable person for Saul here recently. He's loved and adored by Jonathan. He's loved and adored by the people. He's loved and adored by Saul's servants. Everybody likes David except for Saul, the one guy that matters. It says in verse number 2, he said unto him, this is Jonathan's response, "God forbid. Thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will show it me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so." Jonathan could not believe that was his father's intention. That almost leads you to believe that last stretch that we read in chapter 19. Maybe Jonathan wasn't privy to that. You and I know Saul's trying to kill him. Saul wants to kill him. And when David says, "Hey, what have I done that your dad seeks to kill me?" Jonathan, the last time we were with him, Jonathan was talking with Saul and soothing the problem over, right? Jonathan was like, "Hey, Dad, I don't think he did anything. Why are you so mad? Why are you going to kill him?" And that was where Saul made the agreement, he won't die. Surely as the Lord liveth, he'll live, and I won't kill him. Jonathan thinks he smoothed this thing over. When David comes to him, he says, "God forbid, you're not going to die, and my father will do nothing without showing it me. Your dad would tell me." If there was something going on, Dad would tell me. Verse 3, it says that David sware, moreover, and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. David says, Jonathan, he knows. He knows about our relationship. He knows that you're my friend. He knows that he knows the relationship that we have. And he doesn't want to say anything to you. Jonathan just can't, he's kind of flabbergasted. No, if Dad wanted to do anything, he would tell me. No, Jonathan, he wouldn't tell you because he hates me. And he knows that we have a good relationship. He's not going to tell you what's in his mind and what's in his heart. There's a couple of reasons there. He doesn't want to say anything. He says that it's lest he be grieved. He doesn't want to make Jonathan sad. He doesn't want to turn this any worse than he has to. But he's not going to be upfront. What kind of man would tell his son, by the way, I hate your friend and I'm going to kill him? David's like, no, he's not going to tell you, right? And then David makes a statement at the end of this verse, and it shows you how desperate the situation is. All of these things, God has protected him. But listen, David escaped barely. His wife let him out. He's on the run, and he realizes that men have come, and they have hunted him, and they have found him. They found him there at that location where he was with Samuel and the prophets, but God protected him. But that doesn't change the fact that he was this close. Multiple times he has been this close. He has barely missed the edge of a javelin. He has barely missed the people that were hunting him in his home when his wife let him escape, and he has barely escaped those that were pursuing him at the end of the last chapter. At the end of verse 3, when he says, there is but a step between me and death, that is not David showing a lack of faith. We talked about last week how in the midst of what was going on, he wrote that psalm. David doesn't have a lack of faith. He writes many great psalms declaring and showing the faith that he has in God during these troubling times. But it is a declaration of fact. It's not that he's doubting. It's not that he doesn't have faith. It's, I'm about to die. Your dad has been close. He's been super close. He's almost got me a couple of times. There's just the smallest gap. There's but a step between me and death. And then Jonathan said in verse 4 unto David, whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. All right, buddy. You're my friend. What do you want me to do? Jonathan says, what do you want me to do? And here's the conversation. Verse 5. David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even. All right, here's what we have to do. Tomorrow, he says, is the new moon. And as anticipated in some of the scriptures and in some of the traditions of the Jews, there was going to be at least some kind of feast or some kind of event that Saul would put on in commemoration of this. And I'm supposed to be there as a servant, as a ranking servant, both in Saul's army and in Saul's house. David would be expected to be there on that occasion. It's what it says there in verse 5. Tomorrow's the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. When he throws this party, when he throws this feast, I'm expected to be there. But I'm not going to be there. David said, I'm going to use that opportunity to slip away. And he does. He's going to use that time to get away and to hide in this field. In verse 6 it says, if thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. Now, Jonathan, I need your help. If your dad asks about me, in verse 6, if thy father at all miss me, if he asks, if he questions why I'm not there, you have to cover for me. You have to cover for me. You got to tell him something. Tell him I went home. Tell him somebody at home called and I had to go back to Bethlehem, and there I'm going to be with my family and observe whatever this festival or this sacrifice or feast is. I'm going to observe that with them. But your dad's going to expect me, and if he asks for me, you got to cover for me. And his intention is this in verse 7, if he say thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very wroth, then be sure that evil is determined by him. David says, when you cover for me, Saul's response, how Saul reacts, is going to tell me where he's really at. If you tell Saul, oh yeah, David, he asked, he mentioned he would have been here, but he got called from home, and he went to Bethlehem to be with his family and observe the sacrifice with them. If Saul says, oh, okay, that's fine, no big deal. If he says that it's well, then he's calmed down, right? There no big deal. We'll figure this out. We'll figure out a way to reconcile. But if you cover for me and he gets mad, if Saul throws a fit, in verse number 7, if he be very wroth, if he blows it, where is he? He's supposed to be here. Why isn't he here? And you cover for me and he doesn't take that and doesn't accept that as an excuse, I'll know I'm in trouble. I'll know there's no reconciliation. I'll know that that's it. There's nothing that I can do. So David proposes this idea that Jonathan cover for him and listen to his father's response, and that would tell David where he really stood. Now verse number 8, therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me any iniquity, slay me thyself, for why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? That's David's way of saying, listen, I realize this is a big favor. I need you to do this for me. And I expect you to do this for me in our bond of friendship and in our bond of agreement. I need you to come through for me. Now, if you can't come through for me, if you, Jonathan, feel that I deserve to die, if you feel that I've done anything wrong, if I've wronged you, if I've wronged your dad, if there's any iniquity found in me, tell me now. And you just take care of me now. I won't run. It says there in verse number 8, slay me thyself. Why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? Let's not drag this out any further. Let's not, there's no need for me to go on the run and worry and live in anxiety for the next however long. If you think I've done anything wrong, and if you can't come through for me and you won't stand up for me and you really feel that I'm in the wrong on this, then just kill me now. Let's just end this right here. Let's put all this behind us. You go back home. You can be dad's son. You can get the throne next. All of the things that would have gone in with that. And the friendship here is really put to the test, right? David is asked a big favor. A favor that likely involves, if not out and out lying, kind of, not fully revealing the truth, and kind of giving a little deceptive answer to his dad just so that he can find out where dad stands on the matter. It's the big favor. Number 2, let's talk about the agreement. Okay, the agreement. Verse number 9. Jonathan said, far be it from thee, for if I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come upon thee, then would I not tell it thee? David, I would tell you, okay? Yes, we have an agreement. David, of course, I would tell you if there was anything wrong. If there was, no, far be it from thee. I'm not going to kill you. No, I don't think you did anything wrong. And if I thought that there was anything wrong, if I thought that Dad really meant this evil, then I would tell you. Remember the last conversation Jonathan had with Saul, this was apparently put to rest. And now David's thrown a gauntlet down to him, right? I need you to cover for me. I think your dad's got it out for me still. I think that he's going to get me. Jonathan, you may not realize I've been like a hair's breadth from death. And I need you to go and find out how bad it is. And Jonathan, I didn't necessarily think it was that bad, but David, of course I'll tell you. Verse 10, then said David to Jonathan, who shall tell me? Or what if thy father answer thee roughly? David tells him, I don't have anybody I can trust. Jonathan, it's got to be you. Who shall tell me? And what if Saul makes it dangerous, right? What if Jonathan goes and says these things, and he does cover for David, and what if Saul puts Jonathan in danger, right? And Jonathan can't get away, and Jonathan, maybe Jonathan thinks that, it's dangerous for him, so he's going to send one of his counselors, or he's going to send one of his lads. He's going to send somebody to relay the message. David's like, I can't trust anybody. I have to hear it from you. And your dad may make it dangerous for you. He may speak to you roughly, but Jonathan, I have to hear this from you. And Jonathan said unto David, come, let us go out into the field. And they went out both of them into the field. And Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel. Now, he's not calling David the Lord God of Israel, but he says to David, the Lord God of Israel. Basically, he is swearing. He's going to, raise his hand or whatever he is swearing by the Lord God of Israel. When I have sounded my father about tomorrow any time or the third day, sometime over these next 3 days, behold, if there be good toward David, and I sin not unto thee, and show it thee, the Lord do so and much more to Jonathan. He swears that if dad means good, means to do good to David, and I don't tell you, then Lord, you give me what I deserve. Jonathan is making an agreement with David that I will do it, and I'm not going to leave this thing hanging. And I'm not going to be deceptive. If dad means good to you, I'm not going to let you worry. I'm not going to let you keep hiding and stay on the run forever. If dad leads me to believe that he means good, I'm going to get you that word as soon as possible. And then the rest of verse 13 says, but if it please my father to do thee evil, then I will show it thee and send thee away. But David, if dad means evil, you got to go. You can't go home either. He's watching there. He's got eyes around the palace. He's going to be watching at home. Basically, David, if dad's got it out for you, you have to go. You'll be a fugitive. You'll be on the run. So verse 13 says, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee, as he hath been with my father. I can't go with you. I will get you the message. But if it's good, I'll get it to you as soon as possible. If it's bad, I'll get it to you, and you have to go. You have to go. Verse 14, and thou shalt not only, while yet I live, show me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also thou shalt not cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord hath cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. Now, David, I've agreed to do this for you. I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to go and I'm going to find out what's in my dad's mind and in my dad's heart. And I'm going to cover for you, and I'm going to do this bidding. You have to agree then that when the day comes, you won't forget what I've done for you. And you'll return that kindness to me and that kindness to my family. You see, listen, Jonathan knows. Jonathan knows God has rejected Saul from being king. And it has not been publicly declared yet, but little by little it starts becoming aware, first to Jonathan and in a while to Saul, David's the one. They didn't know that initially, but it's starting to come out that they start to understand it's David, isn't it? David's the one that's going to take this throne away from me. And he makes David promise. I'm promising you I'll keep up my end of the bargain. But you've got to promise me when this is over, you'll take care of my family. And when it's time for you to seek out revenge, or if it's time for you to ascend the throne, you know what kings often would do in that day? If you had a family, if you had somebody who was king and then somebody else took the throne from him, what's the first thing that new king would do? He'd kill everybody that was in the old king's family. He would not leave him a successor. He'd destroy their entire family. There's more of that does happen later in the Old Testament. But Jonathan makes David promise, you won't do that to me. And you will take care of my family, and this kindness that I've shown you, you'll show it to my family. Verse 16. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, let the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemies. That's the agreement. And Jonathan caused David to swear again because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. There's the agreement. An agreement between two friends. I will go. I'm going to go into my dad and I'm going to cover for you. You're supposed to be there. I'm going to cover for you and I'm going to find out and I'm going to tell you what my dad tells me. In turn, you owe me one. You have to promise that when this is over, you'll take care of my family. So that's your agreement. Verse number 18, let's talk about number 3. Let's call this the signal. Now, how's Jonathan going to get this message to David? If Saul senses any kind of disloyalty, what's going to happen? He's going to have somebody following Jonathan. He's already got men out looking for David. So how do I relay the message? It's not like I can leave the palace and just jump on a horse and drive out to you. So verse number 18, then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. When thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly, and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel. Now this is a place they would have been familiar with. David, you go run. You hide for 3 days, and when that's over, you come over here to this spot. That spot, remember where we were before. And by this stone, I'll be expecting you to be there. Verse 20, and I will shoot 3 arrows on the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark. So after 3 days, Jonathan was going to go out and, unbeknownst to anybody, or so as to not make people notice, he was going to go out and, for lack of a better term, target practice. He wasn't just going to go out and do things randomly and draw attention to himself. He was going to go out and take target practice. And I'm going to shoot arrows like I'm shooting at a mark. Okay, that's what we would call it. He's going to take target practice. Verse 21, and behold, I'll send a lad. As it would be common, Jonathan would not be able, as the king's son, to go probably anywhere by himself. He would have his armor bearer. He would have the one responsible to carry his armor, his bow, and his arrows. So here's what he'll do. I'll send the lad, the person that was usually responsible, saying, go find the arrows. I'll shoot the arrows, and then I'll send my armor bearer, or this lad, I'll send him out to retrieve them. If I expressly say unto the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them. Then come thou, for there is peace to thee, and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. When the lad goes out to grasp these arrows, that's when you get the signal. If I expressly say to the lad, okay, I'm going to send him, you got to listen for what I holler. You got to listen for what I say. Behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them. That's the signal, verse 21, that there is peace and no hurt. But, verse 22, if I say thus unto the young man, behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord hath sent thee away. Now, if I tell him, I think the arrows are a little further down, you got to go. You have to run. You have to leave, because dad means evil. That's the best way that I know how to give you the signal. I'm going to be followed at all times. I'm going to have my armor bearer with me. So I'm going to take target practice. And when he goes to retrieve my arrows, you have to listen. And that's when the signal comes. Verse 23, and as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever. That's the agreement. That's the signal. And let the Lord stand and recognize this agreement that we have made. Now listen, this takes a lot for Jonathan, doesn't it? Jonathan, if he is not a good man of character and someone who honors his covenant and honors his loving friendship that he has with David, you know what Jonathan could do? Jonathan could let David go on the run and never return, and for all intents and purposes, inherit the throne after Saul dies. If Jonathan is ambitious, after 3 days, he can send, listen, you know what? I know where he's going to be in 3 days. He's going to be right there behind that stone. If Jonathan is not a man of his word, and if Jonathan is not a trustworthy and a loyal friend, this ends real bad for David, no matter which way you cut it. Be careful who you trust in this world. I think we've talked about this a few times as the relationship of David and Jonathan has come up, but I cannot say enough how important it is to really consider who you trust in this world, who you regard as your closest confidants, who you tell everything to, who you open your heart to. Make sure that when you open your heart to your friends and those people that you consider deepest and closest to you, make sure you do that to people that have your good in mind and desire the best for you. And they're not out to use you or to just advance and further themselves. Surround yourself with people that are godly, that love the Lord, that want the best for you, and that you can trust as a loyal friend. I'm not saying that's who all of your friends are going to be in this world. I'm not saying that every friend you have has to meet that standard. But I would say that those friends that you are that open with, those friends that you really confide in and that you spill your guts to, make sure that you trust them. Make sure that they have your good interest in mind and at heart, that they love you, that they are concerned for your good. David's trusting Jonathan, and if Jonathan's not faithful and loyal, this ends real bad for David. All right, number 4, lastly, the verdict. Verse number 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat down to meat. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, upon a seat by the wall, and Jonathan arose. Abner sat by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean. That first day comes, and David's not there, is he? And you know what? Saul doesn't think anything about it. Something's happened. Something's come up. Maybe he's not clean, right? If David had done something, if he had touched something that was unclean, maybe David is ceremoniously unclean, and he really can't be here according to the terms of the law. Read Leviticus chapter 15, Leviticus chapter 22. We don't have time to really do that tonight, but those would be the references. If he's unclean, surely that something's befallen him. He's unclean. He'd be here, right? But verse 27, it says, it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meat, neither yesterday nor today? Now see, on the second day, Saul knows something's up. Now, whatever benefit of the doubt he might have had in the first verse, he's clean, surely he's not clean. Well, according to Leviticus 15, Leviticus 22, you know how long that uncleanliness lasts? Until he washes it even. Basically, you're unclean for one day, you wash, and you're good to go for the next day. Well, this is the second day. So Saul's like, it wasn't that. It wasn't uncleanness. Hey, Jonathan, where's David at? He wasn't here yesterday. He's not here today. In verse 28, it says, Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, let me go, I pray thee, for our family hath a sacrifice in the city, and my brother. And he hath commanded me to be there. And now if I have found favor in thine eyes, let me get away, I pray thee, and see my brethren. Therefore he cometh not unto the king's table. That's why he's not here, Dad. Well, he didn't call him Dad. He actually calls him Saul, showing him, recognition, something greater than a familial relationship here. But he would have been here. He got called away, and his family needed him to come to Bethlehem. His brother gave him, strict orders, probably, relaying that it came from Dad. They really want you here. That's why he's not here, Dad. David went back to Bethlehem to be with his family during the sacrifice, during the festival, ceremony, whatever it was. Now, this was the test, right? You cover for me, and however your dad responds, that'll let me know. What does verse 30 say? Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, Thou son of the perverse, rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. Saul explodes on Jonathan. You liar. He calls him the son of a perverse and rebellious woman. That you've chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion. He just erupts on him. You're lying to me. You know where he is. You keep covering for him. Don't you know that it's to your own detriment? As long as he is alive, you'll never inherit this throne. And that gives you the second. Saul has figured it out. Now Saul has been told by the Lord that God has rejected him. But Saul has slowly figured out what? That the spirit that was once on him was on David. And he can see that God is blessing and protecting David everywhere he goes. And Saul has put the pieces together and understands it's him. It's David. And as long as David's alive, Jonathan, why would you cover for him? He's taken a throne. He's going to take a throne that belongs to you. And as long as he is alive, you'll never succeed. You'll never grow. This throne will never be yours. Tell me where he is. He has to die. We got to kill him. Well, you got your answer, didn't you? Jonathan can't pretend anymore. Not that he was pretending, but he can't pass over that anymore. It's clear to him now too. Dad hates him. And Dad wants to kill him. He wants to kill David. So Jonathan answered just like he did in the previous chapter in verse 32, Saul his father, and said to him, Wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? Same question he asked in the previous chapter, but Dad, why? What did he do? I don't understand. But now Saul's response is different, because in verse 33 it says that Saul cast a javelin at him. Saul really needs to quit holding on to weapons, right? This, though, shows you the depth of his hatred for David. He's starting to throw spears at his own son, because his son decided with or joined with David. He sided with David over him. It says in verse number 33 that Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, and whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. That was the test, right? You cover for me, and let's see how your dad responds. He blew it. He blew up. He erupted on Jonathan. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had done him shame. Jonathan gets mad and sad all at the same time. Frustrated. How could Dad do this? What in the world is Dad so mad about? And then grieved, because reality sets in upon him that David is going to be a man hunted. That David, his friend, his best friend, the one that he loves as a friend in this world, my dad hates him, and my dad's coming after him. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out to the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad with him. And he said to his lad, "Run, find out the arrows which I shoot." And as the lad ran, behold, he shot an arrow beyond him. That was the signal, right? Jonathan was going to shoot his arrows, and then the lad was going to go run after him. Verse 37, when the lad was come to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried after the lad and said, "Is not the arrow beyond thee?" That was the signal, wasn't it? If I holler for him, "Hey, the arrows are right over here," it's all good. If I shoot these arrows real far and I holler real loud, "Oh, no, further, they're way beyond you." The further the arrows go, David, the further you got to go. And there's the signal given. And Jonathan cried after the lad, "Make speed, haste, stay not." And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master, but the lad knew not anything. Only Jonathan and David knew the matter. Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad and said unto him, "Go, carry them to the city." And when he got out of sight, it says, as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of the place toward the south and fell on his face to the ground and bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept with one another until David exceeded. And Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever." And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. The signal was given, and David knew, I have to go. The lad gathers up the arrows, takes Jonathan's armor, goes to head back. And in this last meeting, out of sight from everyone else, just these 2 friends, there's a recognition of the covenant that they made and the loyalty and friendship that they intended to keep showing to each other. David has to go on the run. David has to flee. And his wife, Saul's daughter, can't save him. And his best friend, Saul's son, can't stop it now either. David is a fugitive. David has to go on the run. The king of Israel hates him. The king of Israel wants to see him dead, and you and I don't even know why. Right? If we were just there in real time in the scene, we wouldn't know why. You and I know why. He's threatened by David. He's jealous. He's envious of the adoration and love that's being shown to David. That evil spirit that comes upon him that's just driven him to jealousy and envy and hatred of David. It's starting to come together. Saul's starting to realize this is the one. He's going to take this throne away from me and my family. And in just an outpouring of hatred, Saul explodes on his own son. Right? You know, when you can't control, it's really important to learn how to control yourself, right? To be disciplined, to not lose control, to not be overwhelmed by things like hatred or anger, jealousy, those emotions, because if you allow yourselves, when you and I allow ourselves to be possessed and overwhelmed by those emotions and those feelings, you find that you have very little control on your outbursts. And when you cut loose and let loose on things like that, Saul has now thrown a spear at his own son. He has sent men to spy out the house that his own daughter lives in. Saul has very little self-control, and it's starting to evidence itself in turning against even people that are close to him and that love him. The relationship that Jonathan has with David seems so contrary to that, though, because there is a loyalty and a love there. There is a friendship there that went beyond even the relationship that Jonathan had with Saul. It was his father, right? And Jonathan, if he was selfish, and if he was jealous, and if he was as envious as his father, he could have hung David out to dry multiple times. And yet Jonathan in the Bible, as much as any character, is showing us what true loyalty and friendship really can be and what it should be. Make sure that your friends in this world are people like that. And build relationships like that with people that you can trust, with people that love the Lord, with people that you love, and that you are out for each other's betterment, that you're out for each other's good. So there's two things in this chapter. This great relationship between Jonathan and David. It's cemented. Jonathan did his part. He kept up his end of the bargain. If we ever get there, if we decide to go on through the life of David beyond Saul, David will keep up his end of the bargain. And he'll take care of some from Jonathan's family and meet his end of the deeds as well. The relationship between Jonathan and David, but at the end of this chapter, he's a fugitive. You believe that? We're just a couple chapters away from him killing the giant Goliath, saving the testimony and the reproach from Israel, leading Israel into battle, winning numerous battles, and now he's on the run as a fugitive. That's what jealousy does. That's what hatred and envy does. It blinded Saul, and he couldn't even see those that were closest to him and that were best for him. All right. Let's have a word of prayer. We'll cover some more next week. Father,